Hey there. So we're going to be in the book of John today, the book of John. If you have your Bible, I'd love for you to turn to the book of John with me. And we're going to start in chapter number 2. If you don't have a Bible, if you want to take your phone, you go to BibleGateway.com, or you can go to Bible.com. You got options, or you can download the Bible app and follow along with us. We've decided to go kind of low tech for this particular series and not have the verses up on the screens and on the TV. It's okay. We're bringing the technology back soon, but that's what we did for this series. What we wanted to do really through the Rabbi Jesus series was to just look at some stories that maybe you've heard or read about Jesus before, but to go farther, deeper into them and to understand there's so much more there than maybe we see on the surface. And my hope is that it helps us fall more in love with Jesus and more in love with what God is doing in our world. That's if you're a follower of Jesus. If you're not a follower of Jesus yet, if you're considering it, you're looking for space to think through it, then we hope that you're getting a more thorough understanding of what it is that Jesus taught, what he did, and what it meant might be helpful for you as you consider it. A few years ago, there was a bus that traveled through the streets of London, and on this bus, there was a message, and we actually have a picture of the bus, and it said, "There's probably no God. Now stop worrying and enjoy your life." There's probably no God. Now stop worrying and enjoy your life. There seems to be this belief among some agnostics or atheists that the real problem with the world that we have to solve is that so many people believe in God, and that it's stressing them out. And if they just stop believing in God, then their lives would be way better and they'd be able to enjoy them more. And we actually looked at some of these arguments a number of months ago in a series we did called Who Needs God, where we talked about the new atheist movement and some of the arguments that they made. There's probably no God, so stop worrying and enjoy your life. The problem is the assumption, right, that it's God or a picture of God that's keeping us from enjoying our life is quite an assumption to make. Now, there's no doubt, and we've been very clear with this in the past, there's no doubt that there are versions of Christianity or versions of understanding God that are stressful and anxiety-inducing, and that those versions actually don't line up with the God that Jesus invites us to follow. So there are some, one of the examples we gave a number of months ago was there are some people who hold on their whole life to this idea of guilt God. Guilt God. This is the God who loves you, but he does not like you, right? This is the God who is just constantly waiting for you to mess up so he can zap you from heaven or something. Is so excited when you fail because what he'd really love to do is give you a hurting, right? To teach you a lesson. That's guilt God. And some of us live our entire lives always worried that God is looking over our shoulder, just hoping that we'll mess up. We do not have a great loving picture of God, and it's certainly not the picture of God that Jesus paints for us. So if you left guilt God behind, great. I can understand why that would produce anxiety, and it's not helpful because it doesn't even align with what Jesus taught. But for many people, their anxiety, their stress, it has nothing to do with them believing or not believing that there's a God. That's not actually where it comes from. A friend of mine, he's a pastor as well. His name is Adam. And he's very smart, very funny. I just met him a few months ago, actually, but I've really gotten to enjoy getting to know him. And he told me a few months ago the story where a few years back, he was in kind of a dark place. He was really struggling and wrestling. And his wife told him, "I really think you need to go to a therapist, or you might need to go to a doctor. We got to figure out what's going on here. Why you were having this guy normally has some joy, and he just wasn't having any joy." So he went to a doctor, and the doctor said, "You know what? I really would like to do a sleep study on you. Some people can actually be in bed, 6, 7, 8 hours a night, but their sleep is so poor that it affects everything about them throughout the day." So he's like, "Okay, I'll do that. What does that look like?" "Well, you go into this room and you sleep, and a bunch of people watch you sleep." It's basically how every horror movie starts, right? So it's this is not a comfortable proposition. So he goes in, lays down, a bunch of doctors watch him sleep, super uncomfortable. He gets up the next morning, goes to work. He gets a call back a couple days later. "Hey, we didn't do the test right, and we need you to come back and do it again." "Oh, geez. Okay. All right." So he comes back. He does it again. Doctor meets with him a couple days later. He says, "Adam, we had you come in because a second time because we thought we must have messed up the test the first time because the results were so horrible, we've never seen anything like it. But you came in a second time, and the results were so horrible, the only one we'd seen like it was the first time that you came in. So we actually think that you are getting almost no sleep. No matter how long, you're getting almost no sleep." And then he asked him, do you have a job?" And he said, "Yeah." He said, "Really?" And he said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, what do you do?" He said, "I'm a pastor. I get up and talk to people." And he said, "Really?" And Adam said, "Yes." And the doctor said, "Are you good at it?" And Adam said, "I think I'm okay at it." He said, "Because we're not sure how you're still alive. We're not sure how you're functioning. That's how little sleep you're getting every single night. And so he prescribed him a whole list of things that they were going to do. There's a CPAP machine involved. There's some medication he was going to take. And then before he left, he said to Adam, a lot of times we have patients who come in and they're getting such bad sleep that I tell them, I can't wait to see you again in a month because you are going to feel so much better. You're going to feel so much rested, and I'm going to meet a whole new you, basically. Like you're going to have a fresh perspective on life. He's like, Adam, I'm not going to say that to you because you're not just going to have a fresh perspective. You're going to be an entirely different person when I meet you in a month. I can't wait to meet you. So Adam came back a month later after everything, and like he was an entirely different person. The dark thoughts he'd had, everything, like it was all related to this issue, right? This problem that he'd had, and he'd been wrestling with it for a very long time by that point. The truth is, right, there are all kinds of things that we wrestle with, that we struggle with, because there's all kinds of chaos in the world. And if you're wrestling with something or going through a difficult time and you see a bus drive by and it's got this really hopeful message, there's probably no God, so stop worrying and enjoy your life. Well, that sounds great as long as you are enjoying your life. But what do you do if you see that sign and you're actually on your way home from the grocery store and you're in your 60s and what's happened is a couple of years ago, your spouse who you've been married to for 40 years, they started having early onset dementia. Like they shouldn't be walking through this right now, but they are. And some days they seem like themselves, and some days they're just mean. They're cruel. And they've done everything from throwing their food across the room to getting their poop on the wall in the bathroom. And like when you come home, you don't know what you're going to get. And you try to tell yourself, this is the person you've dedicated. Remember, you've devoted your whole life to them. You've spent decades together. You've raised children together. You've gone through trials and struggles and triumphs together. And now this person is becoming someone else. And you try to remind yourself when they treat you so poorly that it's not really them. It's the fact that their brain is degenerating. And you know that in your head, but in your heart, the same loving face that used to smile at you, tell you they loved you, tell you you're handsome or you're beautiful, you're wonderful, is now cursing at you, screaming at you. There's probably no God, so stop worrying and enjoy your life. Enjoy my life. Are you kidding? Like, belief about God is not the thing that's making my life a challenge. Imagine you're a young man who's got a neurological disorder. You've been confined to a wheelchair your entire life. The only saving grace is that your right hand has been able to tick out messages on a computer pad. Thank God for that. But you know that as the months pass by and then eventually the years, the electromagnetic storm that's happening in your body is eventually going to make this right hand just like the rest of you, and you're not going to be able to communicate as well anymore. It's okay. There's probably no God. Stop worrying and enjoy your life. Imagine you've been married for a while and you just found out that your spouse has been having an affair. You never thought they would do that. Never crossed your mind. You trusted them completely. Not only have they been having an affair, but they are leaving you. They've decided, after 20 years of marriage, that they just don't want the responsibility of being married and raising kids anymore. So that leaves you with a high schooler and a middle schooler to pick up the pieces of their midlife crisis. Everything that your world was just a few months ago has been shattered and exploded. But hey, there's probably no God. So stop worrying. Enjoy your life. See this idea that that's the thing holding us back just doesn't seem to hold much water. It works really well as long as you're enjoying your life. But if you're not enjoying your life, what that sign is really saying is that there's no help coming. There's nothing else out there that might change this. Tomorrow will look like today. Because the truth is what gets us all upset and what brings tension in our lives, it's not the idea that, oh, maybe there's God or maybe there's not. I'm so stressed about that. For most people, that's not it. For most people, it's that the world is chaotic and we can't seem to control it. And all of the great religious traditions for the last millennia have all tried to teach some version of how to control the chaos. It's unpredictable. It's out of my control. Christianity really is the tradition that says, actually, the world is chaotic and actually, you'll never be able to get it under control on your own. Well, that's a hopeful message. Thanks, Jesus. But what Christianity has taught is that the world wasn't created chaotic, it was created good. And that the God who created it is setting himself to put it back the way it was supposed to be. Jesus was a Jew. And most of us probably know that, but a few of us might be, what? Jesus was a Jew. And in the Jewish scriptures, the very first book that they have is a book called Genesis. And in your English Bible, if you have an English Bible, the very first book in your English Bible will be Genesis. And Genesis starts off with this glorious poem, this beautiful line that lots of people have learned. Genesis starts off by saying, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And then it goes and talks about how God created. And God created day, and he created night, and he created an expanse, a separation of the water and of the sky, and he created dry land, and he created the sun and the moon and the stars. And then he created creatures to fly in the sky and creatures to swim in the waters. And then on the final day, he created creatures to roam the land and eat the vegetation he created. And finally, in his ultimate act of creation, right there at the end, he created humans out of the dust of the earth. That's the creation story, that he did that in 6 days, and he said that it was good, it was good, it was good. It was all very good. In other words, the first word that Scripture says about you, about me, about this earth is that it is good. But the reality is that's not been our experience of it in many cases. And then on the seventh day, he rests. So there's that week. It's 7 days. This creation account lasts for 7 days at the very beginning of Genesis chapter 1. And then you get into chapter 2, and there's another version of that creation account. It's like a recapitulation of what came before it. And then in Genesis chapter 3, human beings who were created in order to commune with God and to watch over the earth, to shepherd it, to steward it, they instead turn their backs on God. And they turn their backs on what they're supposed to be doing. And so in that moment, the caretakers of the world choose to stop caring, and all of the world suffers because of it. There's a fracturing, there's a loss, there's a fall. And that's when chaos ends up entering into the world. And so the rest of the scriptures are about how God is going to deal with, how God is going to fix, how God is going to renew, restore, reconcile the chaos. That's the way it starts. So by the time we get to the book of John, the rest of Scripture has been addressing this problem that human beings keep messing up over and over and over again. And finally, we get to John, and we start to read about the story of Jesus. And John bases his story around a whole lot. It's one of the most well-crafted books in all of the Bible. But in the very beginning of John, in chapter 1, he starts off with this grand statement that in the beginning was the Word. And the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Which, of course, echoes the book of Genesis. And as we find out as we read through it, all of John echoes the book of Genesis. And what he's trying to tell these Jewish people, his Jewish audience, is that God is doing a brand new thing right here in the midst of the old thing. So for this final week of Rabbi Jesus, I want us to look at the miracles of Jesus as portrayed in the book of John, because he's telling us about the miracles, the signs of Jesus, but he's also telling us something else. John chapter 2. John chapter 2. Jesus is at a wedding. And what you need to know about weddings in the first century, Jewish weddings, is that they would last for several days. Doesn't that sound exciting? How many of you, by show of hands, really love going to weddings? Yep. Okay, all right. So if you're online, just so that you will know, hundreds of people in this room, 14 people like going to weddings, okay? So if you're planning a wedding in the next year or so, think of us. Keep it short, okay? Can you keep it short? All right, so in the first century, though, weddings were huge parties. And they involved a lot of booze, all right? They would start off with top shelf wine, and then once people had a lot to drink, they would go to cheaper wine. It's like the $2 Chuck stuff, because at this point, right, in the story, it's like, oh, great, you're all a little plastered, and so we don't need to bring out the best because you won't really realize that that's what we're doing anyway. So that's what happened at these big weddings. There was a lot of drinking, a lot of festivity, a lot of celebration. And what you definitely did not want to do, it was okay to have cheap wine, but what you didn't want to do was run out of wine. You were a bad host if the open bar had to close. So you did not want to run out of wine. Well, what's just happened that we see here in John chapter 2 is that the wedding party hosts have run out of wine. On the third day, chapter 2, verse 1 of John. On the third day, a wedding took place at Cana in Galilee. What day was it? The third day. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. When the wine was gone, Jesus' mother said to him, "They have no more wine." Jesus' answer here is kind of awesome. Let's read it together. "Woman, why do you involve me?" Jesus said, "My hour has not yet come." The first time I read that, I think I was in high school. I thought that was an amazing response. And I was like, I could probably use that. My mom would ask me to take the trash out. "Woman, why do you involve me?" Right? My time has not yet come. My dad was not impressed with me quoting scripture. So, okay. He's like, no, quote scripture, just not in that way. Got it, Dad, okay. My hour has not yet come. By the way, his hour has not yet come. We see Mary appear twice in the book of John. Here, and the next time we see her appear, Jesus is being nailed to a tree. And his hour has come. So long before that happens, Mary goes to him. We've got a problem. The host is about to be embarrassed. They need wine. They don't have it. She knows that he can do something about it. Can you take care of this? And he says, basically, I don't really want to. And then she does the most amazing mom passive-aggressive thing ever. Instead of responding to him, she looks at the servants next to him and says, do whatever he tells you, and she walks away. In other words, it's like, I know you don't want to. You're going to do it, though. That's what you're going to do. So she walks out. Do whatever he tells you. Nearby stood 6 stone water jars, the kind used by the Jews for ceremonial washing, each holding from 20 to 30 gallons. Remember that they're used by the Jews for ceremonial washing. We will come back to that. Jesus said to the servants, fill the jars with water, so they filled them to the brim. Then he told them, now draw some out and take it to the master of the banquet. The master of the banquet at this point would have been one stressed out guy. Okay, he knows they're out of wine and that people are about to start complaining. So this guy is not at his best, probably. So they did so, and the master of the banquet tasted the water that had been turned into wine. He did not realize where it had come from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew. Then he called the bridegroom aside and he said, everyone brings out the choice wine first, and then the cheaper wine after the guests have had too much to drink. But you have saved the best till now. In other words, Jesus doesn't just make wine. Jesus makes awesome wine, okay? Like, you've saved the best stuff for last. Why did you do that? What Jesus did here in Cana of Galilee was the first of the signs through which he revealed his glory, and his disciples put their faith in him. John is about to send us on a treasure hunt throughout the rest of this gospel. He tells us that this was the first of the signs. When we get Jesus turning water into wine, how many signs is this that Jesus has performed in the book of John? 1. I'm going to need a lot more reaction than that for the rest of this message. Okay, I'm going to ask you to do several things today. I'm going to need to be able to hear you. I heard you breathing louder than I heard you say the number 1, okay? So when Jesus turns water into wine, how many signs has he done so far in the book of John? 1. That was so much better, especially you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that on the front. You're setting the way for everybody. Okay, so I was talking to my staff about this series and about like this particular message months ago, and one of the things we talked about was like, what is the difference, right, between a miracle and like a magic trick? Because people understand magic tricks, and like people might think that. And so we thought, oh, wouldn't it be cool if we paid like a professional magician to come and do a little bit of magic for us so we could talk about the differences between that? And then they said, that would be awesome. We don't have a budget for it, so Josh, if you could just learn magic, that'd be awesome. Okay, so here's what we did. This is supposed to be an easy trick. That's what they told me at the store. I don't know if it will be. Okay, all right, so we've got the colors, they align. It's like a stoplight, right? Green at the bottom, yellow, red at the top. So the trick is supposed to be that I wave the wand and I make the red ball disappear. Okay, that's supposed to be the trick. So we're going to try that real fast. Are you with me? Does that work? Again, you're going to need to react more than what you think you are so far. Okay, what color am I supposed to put in first? There you go. Second? Yellow. Third? Red, right. That red's at the top, so that red should disappear from the top. And abracadabra. Okay, I appreciate your sympathy cheer, but that's not actually how that's supposed to work. So let's try it one more time. All right, what goes first? Green. What goes second? Yellow. Last? There we go. All right, abracadabra. Oh, geez, no, that's not good. Okay, I'll tell you what, I've got a solution then. I've got an idea. What if we take the red ball out, and then maybe we could put it like in this box. Maybe this box, I could make it disappear if I like. Do you feel like this is working? I don't know. Maybe it is. Is it working? Is it gone? I think it's working. Yeah. All right, so the trick then is to make sure that it actually comes back over here. So I need to go like abracadabra. There we go. Okay, there we go. That wasn't too bad. Okay, so there's that. All right, then would you like to learn a magic trick real fast? Okay, most of you didn't say yes, to be honest with you, but more said yes than said they like going to weddings. So that's good, I guess. Okay, so here's kind of the way that this trick works. And again, I don't do this, so I don't really know what I'm doing, okay? But this is one that you can make at home, which is cool, right? So you can just take a piece of cardboard or maybe like a thicker piece of white paper if you like a really manly piece of paper, and you can staple it together on the edges or something, okay? So, and then you put 1 dot on this side, 4 dots on this side, 3 dots on this side, and 6 dots on this side, okay? Did I go too fast? Okay, all right, so grab your cardboard, right? You put 1 dot on this side, 4 dots on this side, 3 dots on this side, and 6 dots on this side, okay? Are you with me? No, okay, I get it. All right, so I don't need your sympathy applause, okay? All right, here's the trick. It's pretty easy. Look, there's not actually 1 dot on this side. There's 2 dots on this side. So see, it's all about where you hold it when you start, see? So that's that. So there's 2 dots on this side. And there's not actually 4 dots on this side. There's 5 dots on this side, but it looks like 6 if you hold it there. You get it? You make sense? Does this make sense? All right, so if you're making it at home, all you do is you just put a dot in the middle, and then you put another dot at the top, okay? Or if you want to, you can put the other dot on the bottom. All right? So, and then on the back, so how many dots we got on this side? 2, great. And then on the back, you just put 2 dots on this side, 3 on this one. You can put, so that third dot in the middle, right, on the right side there. Does that make sense? Yep. Or if you want, you can put it on the left side. Are you with me? Are you sure? Okay. So how many do we got on this side? 5. How many on the other side? 2. 3. Right. That's true. So so again, you just want to be careful with it. It's not a big deal. So we got 3 dots on this side. Right. 6 on the other side. And honestly, if you practice it over and over, you won't have a problem pulling it off. It'll all go very well. So all right. So 3 on this side, 6 on this side, and then we're all set to go. That's fine. Okay. Okay, first of all, if we have any actual magicians watching, I'm sorry for that. I realize that was incredibly lame. Secondly, what is the difference, right, between like a trick and a sign? Like, it feels like the one thing you could kind of like, oh, people are fooled, but like, what's the difference between a trick and a sign, between magic and what we see Jesus actually doing here in the book of John? Well, the biggest difference, I think, is the significance. You got to keep in mind that he did this in 6 ceremonial jars. In other words, these were jars that were normally used for ceremonial cleansing. Going back to the Hebrew Bible, right, the Jewish religious system that Jesus was walking into, essentially, you use these for ceremonial cleansing as it was prescribed in the Old Testament law. Jesus takes these 6 ceremonial jugs, washing jugs, and he essentially, out of the old, right, out of this old, he creates something new. In other words, it's his way of saying that there's something new sprouting up right here in the midst of this old thing. It's kind of brilliant. It's kind of wonderful. And that is the first sign. How many signs has Jesus done so far in the book of John? 1. Very good. All right, we're going to move on. From chapter number 2, we're going to go to chapter number 4. Chapter number 4. And we're going to start in verse number 48. Jesus has got a crowd gathered around him, and that crowd is, wanting to see him do more miracles, right? You've done miracles. We want to see you do more miracles. And he says in verse 48, he's kind of frustrated. He says, unless you people see signs and wonders, you will never believe. Then a royal official came up to him whose child was very sick at home. And the royal official said, sir, come before my child dies. Go, Jesus replied, your son will live. In other words, I'm not going to show you. I want you to just go. Trust me that it'll happen, right? Because he's just been kind of frustrated that people have to see to believe. He tells this guy to go, and what happens? Well, the man took Jesus at his word, and he departed. He leaves immediately. I believe you. I believe that you healed my child from here. And so he goes off. And while he was still on his way, his servant met him with news that his boy was living. And when he inquired as to the time when the son got better, they said to him, yesterday at 1 p.m, the fever left him. In other words, this guy wasn't just right down the street. Like, oh, Jesus performed a miracle. Great. I'll go check and make sure that took, and then I'll come back if it didn't. This guy was like a day's journey away from his home. He'd come that far to see Jesus. And when Jesus told him it's been done, this guy left and believed that it had been done. His servant comes out and greets him as he's on his way home. He tells him what time it happened. Yesterday in the afternoon, the fever left him. Verse 53, then the father realized that this was the exact time at which Jesus had said to him, your son will live. So he and his whole household believed. This was the second sign Jesus performed after coming from Judea to Galilee. How many signs has Jesus performed so far? 2 signs. After this, John stops numbering them and makes us find them for ourselves. What a jerk. After this, he makes us really explore and hunt for them ourselves. So there's another sign that happens in chapter 5 right after this. This is a healing at the pool of Bethesda. And for these next ones, we'll read portions, but we won't read all of them. We're somewhat limited in our time. But at this next one, what you need to know is that there was a pool at Bethesda, and the legend that both Jews and, it seems, first century Romans believed was that sometimes the pools would start to bubble. The water would be stirred. And when the water stirred, they believed that if you had some infirmity, you could jump into the water and you would be healed. Whatever your affliction was, if you were the first one in, you would be healed. So it was like it was like a race to try and get healed by the angel, okay? That they believed was like stirring the waters up. And so Jews believed that it was Yahweh who was doing it, and so it was their God, right, who would stir the waters and occasionally heal somebody. And Romans believed it was their gods that was stirring it. But either way, they believed first one in wins, right? It's like a first century Squid Games kind of thing, all right? So they would jump and go in, but people had been gathered there for a long time and had never actually gotten healed, right? So Jesus comes across this man who's infirmed, and Jesus asks him in verse number 6, he says, "Do you want to get well?" Verse 7, "Sir," the invalid replied, "I have no one to help me into the pool when the water is stirred." This guy couldn't walk. Like, I can't win the race, right? There's no way I can do it. So when I'm trying to get in, someone else goes down ahead of me. Then Jesus said to him, "Get up, pick up your mat, and walk." At once the man was cured. He picked up his mat, and he walked. How many signs has Jesus given us now? 3 signs now at this point. All right, so there's the third sign. Then go to chapter 6. Chapter 6, Jesus feeds the 5,000. So there are 5,000 people. Typically, they only counted men when they counted in the first century. I'm not saying it was right. I'm saying that's how they did it. So there's 5,000 men probably, which means there's probably another 10,000 plus women and children. There are a lot of people gathered here. Jesus takes some loaves, he takes some fish, and he feeds the 5,000. Like, it's an amazing miracle. Not only that, but we learn from this passage that this takes place around Passover time. So this takes place at Passover. That's going to make this Jewish audience think back to the origins of Passover. The origins of Passover was when they were slaves in Egypt. God sent Moses to go to Pharaoh and tell him to let my people go. I assume he did it exactly like that. And so Pharaoh said, "No, I'm good, actually." And so there was this back and forth that happened. God ended up having to say, like, "Okay, Pharaoh, if you're going to be that stubborn about it, then I can use your stubbornness for my glory as well. And I'm going to show you the might and power that you're dealing with here in order that all the nations may understand who the one true God is." And so one of the things he does is he protects the Jewish people when these plagues start to come to them. He passes over their houses. The angel of death passes over their houses, and they are unharmed. And so they celebrated this goodness of God toward them every year with this Passover celebration. So they're already thinking of Moses, and they're thinking of God's provision on this Passover, and then Jesus does this sign. By the way, how many signs would this be? 4. The 4th sign. He does this sign where he reminds them of God's provision by providing for them. And then after he's done with that, the disciples go ahead of him in a boat, and further on down in chapter 6, Jesus walks on the water. So when evening came, verse 16, his disciples went down to the lake, and there they got into a boat, and they set off across the lake for Capernaum. And by now it was dark, and Jesus had not yet joined them. And a strong wind was blowing, and the waters grew rough. And when they had rowed about 3 or 3.5 miles, okay, they're out in the middle of the lake. They've gone a very far distance. When they rowed about 3.5 miles, they saw Jesus approaching the boat, walking on the water, and they were frightened. But he said to them, "It is I, don't be afraid." And they were willing to take him into the boat, and immediately the boat reached shore where they were heading. You need to know that Jewish people in the first century were fairly afraid of the water. They were afraid of the rough seas. And you can understand why. It wasn't just a weird phobia that they had. They did not have the Weather Channel. They did not have, any apps on their phone, AccuWeather. Like, none of that thing was around. So you're out in the middle of this big lake. If a big squall comes and you're not expecting it, like, you would die. And because the waters would stir, they believed that maybe there were sea creatures in them in this whole living world. And the sea ends up representing actually evil in lots of their writings. Because why? Chaos. The sea was chaotic, just like the world is chaotic. And the sea couldn't be controlled, just like what we find in life is that there are so many things that happen that we cannot control. And so then they get 3.5 miles out. Jesus comes waltzing up. There's no way this guy wasn't sprinting part of the way, okay, right? And my question is like, because that's too far out. Like, did he run a long ways? And he's like, when he gets close enough for them to see him, he's like, all right, I got to play it cool this last bit, and just kind of like stroll out. I have no idea. But they see him walking on the water, which they would have thought was probably a ghost or a spirit. They're terrified of him. And he's like, it's me. So they let him in the boat. Super kind of them, by the way, to do that. And so how many signs are we up to now? That's the 5th sign. That's right. That's the 5th sign. Okay. And then we're going to skip over to chapter number 9. Several chapters go by before we see another sign. We're up to 5 signs now. And then in chapter number 9, we see this. As he went along, verse 1, he saw a blind man from birth, and his disciples asked him, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Who sinned, he basically asks. All right? This is a really important passage in the first century. It's a really important passage now. A lot of us have been handed some kind of karmic understanding of the world. In other words, you do good, and good comes back to you. You do bad, and bad comes back to you. Here's the problem with that. It's so obviously not true. Do good things happen to bad people? Yes. Do bad things happen to good people? Yes. And the disciples are like, hey, this guy's blind. He must have done something, or his parents must have done something. He must deserve this. And Jesus corrects them. He says, neither this man nor his parents sinned, but this happened so that the work of God might be displayed in him. In the original Greek, it sounds more like he didn't sin, his parents didn't sin, but may God be glorified. In other words, like in the midst of this is bad. In a fallen earth, bad things happen. In a chaotic world, sometimes people are born without sight. But in the midst of it all, we're going to show God's glory in the midst of it all. Let God be glorified in it. As long as it is day, we must do the works of him who sent me. Night is coming when no one can work. And while I am in the world, I am the light of the world. And having said this, and this is, by the way, I think, the grossest miracle Jesus did. Okay, having said this, he spit on the ground, made some mud with the saliva, and put it on the man's eyes. I know it's Jesus, but still, ugh, right? You with me? I mean, did he know about COVID? I don't know. Like I was, it's a good way to get kicked out of an airport, by the way, if you want to try it. So go, he told, wash him in the pool of Siloam. And so the man went up and washed, and he came home seeing. And then he gets interrogated by the Pharisees. It just goes on and on. But how many miracles, how many signs now has Jesus performed? 6. This is the 6th sign. But we've got one more. Chapter 11. Chapter 11. Jesus had a friend. His name was Lazarus. Jesus got word that Lazarus was dying. And then Lazarus died. Lazarus died, and Jesus comes. Jesus weeps, actually, for the death of his friend. In other words, like death, sickness, like these are not things that God is happy about at all. This is the chaos and brokenness and fallenness that has entered into the world. And so Jesus is constantly pushing back on these things because they're not the way that God wants the world to be. So this is what happens in chapter 11, starting with verse number 38. Jesus, once more deeply moved, came to the tomb. So he gets to the tomb of Lazarus. It was a cave with a stone laid across the entrance. Take away the stone, he said. Hey, for just a moment, I want you to try to put yourself there as a spectator who's watching this unfold. Now, you've heard about Jesus. You know that he's done signs. You know he's healed people. But this is about to be a completely different thing. This guy's not just dead. He's been dead for days, wrapped in grave clothes, placed in a tomb. This heavy, heavy boulder's been rolled in front of the tomb. And then Jesus walks up. And I just can't, really think about it. This guy walks up, I assume confident that he knows what's about to happen, and just stands in front of it and looks at somebody and was like, move the stone. I mean, that would be weird. Like, hey, this guy's dead. The only thing that's going to happen if we move this stone is the smell of his rot is going to come out. That's what's going to happen. Move the stone. Okay, but Jesus, it's like super heavy, man. Like, we just got finished doing this a couple of days. I don't want to do it again. Move this stone. They actually argue. But Lord, said Martha, the sister of the dead man, by this time there is a bad odor, for he's been there 4 days. Okay? Then Jesus said, did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God? So they took away the stone. Now, imagine taking away the stone. Jesus is about to make this pronouncement. We'll go ahead and read that. He says, Father, I thank you that you've heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I said this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe that you sent me. In other words, he's having a conversation with the Father, part of the triune God, right? He's having a conversation. It's a conversation he's had often, and so it's a real conversation, but there's also a performative aspect to it, right? I want them to understand what's happening here and that you always hear me when I pray, so I'm just going to let them know that that's what's happening. I'm going to say that out loud. I know that you always hear me, that they may believe. And when he said this, Jesus called in a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. Can you imagine being there and just like the tension that you would start to feel as you've, like, the guys have huffed and puffed, and they've moved the stone. There's a whole crowd of people. Lazarus, like, Martha's just told him, like, look, he's been dead for 4 days. Like, this is not happening. He's like, no, move the stone, do it. And so then he says a prayer, and he says, Lazarus, come out. And you're just standing there, and you're like, there's this feeling of like, okay, this guy's not going to come out. And this is going to be embarrassing. Like, what do we do? What do we say to Jesus when he doesn't come out? This is going to be so awkward. Lazarus, come out. The dead man came out, his hands and feet wrapped with strips of linen and a cloth around his face. And Jesus said to them, take off the grave clothes and let him go. At this point, how many signs in the book of John? 7. I need a volunteer, and actually grab someone in the lobby and ask them if they would do it. Where are you at, Kyle? There you are. Come on up here, man. I needed someone without a white shirt. So good job. Way to not wear white today. I took my son to the magic store a few weeks ago. Hey, Kyle, how's it going? It's good to see you. I took my son to the magic store a few weeks ago, and we bought some magic tricks. And this one was really funny because this is a magic deck of cards right here. And so he went to his room and he picked up the little thing that's supposed to teach you how to do them. And so then he came and he showed me the trick. And this is what he said. He gave me the card. He said, pick a card, any card. So I picked a card. Go ahead, pick one. Just anyone. Yep, that's fine. There you go. All right, that one. And then can you look at it? Look at it, and then show it to the camera. Okay. Can we get a real good tight shot? Does that work? We'll just see if it works. It's not working yet. That's great. All right, we got a camera over here. Maybe show it over here. Don't look. Well, it doesn't matter if I look, actually, for this particular one. There we go. All right, so it's a 7 of diamonds, right? That's the card that he had. So in a minute, I'm going to have you pick another card, and you'll do that. But you can't tell me in a minute, okay? So I'm still holding the card. The 7 of diamonds card. And then he picks another card out of the pile while I'm still holding the 7 of diamonds, because he doesn't really know how cards work, right? He doesn't fully understand how it works. And so he picks another card out of the pile and he says, is this your card? The whole thing is just 7s of diamonds. Like, it's not a great trick. And he just didn't understand how it worked. So I'm not going to do that to you. You're very welcome. This is actually, and I'll just show, this is actually like a real deck of cards with all the cards. So whoop, whoop-doop. Oh, this is going great. You get it. Okay, perfect. And you can see too, so you can take a look if you want to. I need you, Kyle, to shuffle those cards is what I need you to do. So just shuffle them maybe a couple times would be fine. We're on a schedule. People would like to eat lunch, that kind of thing. So yeah. All right. So this trick is called the Whispering Queen is what this trick is called. Okay. And I just learned. You got to give me the deck now. All right. So So what you're going to do is you're going to pick a queen. So it can be any queen that you want. What queen would you like?
Do I get to tell you?
Yeah, you can tell me. What queen do you want?
Queen of Spades.
Queen of Spades. Okay. Queen of Spades. That's your card. Okay. Great. Now give me the card. Okay, this is Queen of Spades. We're not going to use it just yet, okay? Queen of Spades, we're going to set it right here. All right, then I want you to come over here, and I want you to cut the deck. So take about 1/3 of the deck and put it here. Very good. Take about 1/3 of the deck and put it here. Perfect. Now point to a deck.
This one.
That one? Okay, great. Now put a finger on each of the decks. Whoops, I accidentally got our queen there. Okay, now take a finger away. Great, that's the deck we're going to use. All right, now you're going to take the top card from that deck, and you're going to look at it yourself, make sure you need to know what it is, okay? All right, and then you're going to go and you're going to show it to that camera, okay? So that everybody can see. I'm going to walk back here and cover my eyes. You tell me when you've shown the camera and you've put it back on top of the deck. You with me?
I got you.
Go for it. But please take your time. I mean, I got nothing to do today. You're done. Great. Perfect. Okay. All right. So we're going to throw these back on top, and I want you to shuffle the deck. Okay. That's great. No. That's fine. You do what you got to do. Feeling good about that? Yeah. All right. Great. So we got our queen. Remember our queen over here? All right. So here's the thing about the queen that you got to know. She's a tattletale. She's a gossip. All right. People don't tell her their most intimate secrets because they know she's going to tell other people. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to have her run through the deck real fast, all right? Okay, we're going to have a little conversation. Hey, how's it going? No, you look good too. I appreciate that. So, What, did they talk to you? Oh, did Jack talk to you? He always talks to you. Yeah. No, he's handsome. I agree. No, so, okay, all right. Did they say so? Okay, yeah, so, all right, she says it was a red card.
Okay.
Is that correct?
So far.
Okay. She says it was a card with hearts on it.
It's true.
Okay. She says it was the ace of hearts.
It is.
Okay, she's never wrong. Thank you. Give Kyle a big round of applause. Thanks for coming out, Kyle. That's a trick. It is not a bad one, but it's a trick. It doesn't have much more meaning than that we entertained for just a little bit. Jesus performs how many signs in the book of John? 7. How many days of creation at the beginning of Genesis? 7. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. 7 signs in the book of John until there's an 8th. Because there's one more sign to talk about very briefly. Jesus rose from the dead. See, these miracles start off, at the beginning, we're making more wine for people who have already had too much to drink. And by the end, we are raising people from the dead. And then there is an 8th sign. An 8th sign would be like the first day of a new week. It's a Monday, but it's a different kind of Monday. The old week, the old creation, the old 7-day thing that had a death problem, the new one doesn't. The old one was drifting into chaos and away from God. The new one is bridging the gap to bring us back to Him. 7 signs and then an 8th. 7 days and then a new day dawns. 7 days and then we start to see that through this death, through this resurrection, through this sign, God is going to renew and reconcile and restore everything. There's probably no God. So just relax and enjoy your life. Or, if you find that life may not always be enjoyable because of the massive amount of chaos, perhaps it makes emotional sense to consider the possibility that there is a God that agrees with you that the world is overly chaotic and is working hard to put it back to its right place. That's what John tells us through these signs. That's what John teaches us through the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Now, next Sunday is Easter Sunday. And we talked as a staff a few months ago, and we decided we thought on Easter Sunday we would talk about the resurrection. Is that okay? Okay. We're going to have a lot of people next week who are here for the very first time. That's what happens every Easter and every Christmas, and it's in part because you invite a lot of people. We've still got, by the way, some invite cards out in the lobby if you want to grab them on your way out. We'd love to have some new people here, and we want to be good stewards of new people. And what we want to show people is that there is hope in the midst of their chaos. There is. That's our hope for them. And so I'm going to ask you to join me next week in being worship leaders for this congregation. How many of you here, by the way, have had a chance to go through Rooted so far? We talked about Rooted a little bit earlier. That's awesome. Yeah, cool. Probably a fifth of the room, so a sixth of the room. That's awesome. I always talk to our Rooted people at the end of their experience, and I tell them that like they are worship leaders in our congregation now. That they don't have to come on a stage and have a microphone, which is a super relief to a lot of them, but that they, in the place where they are, can worship God, and they can show that by their engagement, there is something that's happening in their lives that might be for other people as well. So congregation, I'm going to give you this charge on Easter Sunday. I would really like for you to worship and engage, part for your own experience to engage with God, but also so that you can set an example of what it looks like for life change and transformation to be happening in a life for other people who may not have that kind of experience. Does that make sense? I would love, so what we're going to do right now, we've never done this before. I've never done this anywhere before. I just thought it would maybe be helpful or interesting. We're going to practice together. So next week, we're going to end Easter Sunday, like resurrection is going to be amazing, like what we point toward, because the story of Jesus is amazing. And we're going to end with this song called It Might Get Loud. Huh? It might get loud? This is great. I talked to them about that, just putting in an applause light up here. They thought it'd be too much. They thought you'd get the hints. Okay, great. It might get loud. Okay, that's the name of the song we're doing next week, but it's a new song, and so we wanted to give you a chance to learn it today and to enjoy it, sing it together, so that next week when you come back, you are a worship leader, and it might get loud. That's the hope that we have for you next week. Okay, now here's the thing. How many of you like rock and roll? Like you just really love rock and roll? Like, yeah, okay, all right, cool. A few people do. Some of you are more into like hip hop or rap or whatever, like, and that's great. A lot of our songs, by the way, have a very R&B feel to them. A lot of modern worship day songs do. This one shreds, okay? This is like a real shredder. It's loud because we're celebrating a loud thing. If you like rock, you are gonna love this. If you don't like rock, I'm gonna need you to get over it for the next 6 minutes and just pretend that you do, because the words on this and the joy in this is gonna be awesome. So we're gonna practice today what we're gonna really engage in next week. Can you join me in that for a couple minutes? Stand to your feet. Let's worship. Let's get loud.